The rattle of the stagecoach echoed across the parched landscape as Vivian Vance clutched her valise, her knuckles white with anticipation and dread. The year was 1875, and after traveling for weeks from Boston to the untamed Arizona territory, she was finally approaching Copper Springs, a dusty mining town where her husband of 6 months had established himself as a saloon owner. The letters had stopped coming 3 months ago, right after he'd sent for her to join him in what he described as their palace in the Promised Land. "Madam, we'll be pulling into Copper Springs in about 10 minutes, the driver called down. "Might want to ready yourself. Ain't the most welcoming sight after a long journey." Vivian straightened her travel-worn dress, a once fashionable blue calico that had seen better days. At 24, she had left behind everything familiar: her teaching position, her widowed mother, and the comfort of civilization, all for a man who had swept her off her feet during his business trip east, married her in a whirlwind courtship, then departed for the frontier with promises of sending for her once he was established. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of what passed for the town's main street, a wide, dusty thoroughfare lined with wooden buildings in various states of disrepair. A handwritten sign on the largest structure read, "Silver Dollar Saloon," the very establishment her husband, Theodore, had written about so proudly. "This is it, madam," the driver said, helping her down. "Silver Dollar's right there if you're looking for Mr. Vance." Vivian nodded, gathered her courage, and walked toward the swinging doors of the saloon. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she stepped into the dimly lit interior, the sharp contrast momentarily blinding her. When her vision adjusted, the scene before her made her heart sink. Theodore Vance was sprawled across a poker table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey clutched in one hand, cards scattered beneath him. His once handsome face was bloated, his fine clothes stained and rumpled. Around him, a handful of patrons barely gave her a glance, too accustomed to the proprietor's condition to find it noteworthy. "Theodore," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. A burly bartender looked up. "You must be Mrs. Vance. We wondered if you'd actually come." Is this?" Vivian struggled to form the question, the reality before her so different from the dream she'd been sold. "He's been like this going on 2 months now," the bartender said, not unkindly. "Lost most of the saloon's profits in a poker game to the mining company. Been drowning his sorrows ever since." Theodore stirred at the sound of voices, raising his head blearily. His bloodshot eyes struggled to focus on Vivian. "Vivian? That you?" His words slurred together. "Told you not to come. Sent a letter." "I received no such letter," she replied stiffly, fighting back tears. "I received your instructions to come, and so I have." Theodore laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Well, you wasted your time and money, darling. There's nothing for you here. Saloon's as good as gone. I'm as good as gone." He took another long pull from the bottle. Vivian stood frozen, the weight of her mistake crushing down on her. She had traveled across the country for this, for a drunk husband in a failing business, for broken promises and shattered dreams. "Where am I to stay?" she asked, practical concerns overtaking emotional ones. Theodore waved vaguely. "Room upstairs." "It's where I've been sleeping. When I sleep." He dropped his head back to the table with a dull thud. A tall figure moved from the shadowed corner of the saloon. Vivian hadn't noticed him before, a man in a weather-worn duster, his face partially obscured by the brim of his hat. He approached unhurriedly, spurs jingling with each deliberate step. "Madam," he said, his voice low and resonant. "Appears you've had a long journey for a poor welcome." Vivian straightened her spine, determined not to show weakness before this stranger. "I appreciate your concern, sir, but this is a private matter between my husband and myself." The man removed his hat, revealing sun-weathered features and piercing blue eyes that stood out against his tanned skin. His dark blonde hair was longer than was fashionable back east, tied back at the nape of his neck. "Lucas Lawson, madam. I own the ranch outside town. Known your husband since he arrived. He's been on this path for some time." He glanced at Theodore, who had begun to snore. "That room upstairs ain't fit for a lady. Half the ceiling's caved in from the last rains." "I'm sure I'll manage," Vivian replied stiffly. Lucas Lawson's expression remained impassive. "There's a decent boarding house down the street. Mrs. Miller runs it. Clean, safe. I have very little money left after my journey. Vivian admitted reluctantly. Lucas studied her for a moment, then looked back at Theodore. Something like disgust flashed across his features before he turned back to Vivian. Got a proposition for you, Mrs. Vance. My ranch needs a schoolteacher for the workers' children and those from surrounding homesteads. Position comes with room and board at the main house. Decent wage, too. He paused. You look like someone who might appreciate honest work and a fresh start. Mr. Lawson, Vivian replied, indignation coloring her tone. I am a married woman. I cannot simply abandon my husband, regardless of his current state. Lucas stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your husband owes money to dangerous men, Mrs. Vance. Men who don't care that he's got a wife newly arrived. The saloon will be taken within the week. When that happens, things could get ugly. His eyes held her steadily. I'm offering you a choice. Stay here with him and face whatever comes, or come with me instead. Start fresh at Whispering Creek Ranch. Theodore suddenly stirred, half rising from the table. You listen to him, Vivian, he slurred, surprising her with his alertness. Lucas is right. I'm finished here. Should never have sent for you. He laughed bitterly. Always wanted to be a big man. Ended up a small one instead. Theodore, please, Vivian began, but he cut her off with a wave. Go with Lawson. He's a decent sort. Not like me. Theodore's momentary clarity seemed to drain away as he reached again for the bottle. I'll be moving on soon anyway. Nothing left for me here. Vivian felt the floor shifting beneath her feet, not physically, but in that way that happens when one's entire future suddenly changes course. She had crossed a continent for this man who now couldn't even stand to greet her properly, who was suggesting she go off with a stranger rather than stay with her lawfully wedded husband. Lucas Lawson stood patiently, his hat in his hands, awaiting her decision. There was something solid about him, a steadiness that her husband had once projected but clearly didn't possess. The stagecoach that brought me is leaving for Tucson within the hour, she said finally. Perhaps I should simply return east. With what money, Viv? Theodore asked, momentarily lucid again. Took everything you had to get here, didn't it? And I've got nothing to give you. He gestured helplessly at his disheveled state. Lucas cleared his throat. My offer stands, Mrs. Vance. Proper employment. Your own quarters. No strings attached. He placed his hat back on his head. I'll be at the general store for the next half hour. After that, I ride back to Whispering Creek. As he walked out of the saloon, Vivian turned to Theodore, who had slumped back onto the table. How did it come to this? She asked quietly. One bad decision after another, he mumbled. Started with thinking I could make it out here. Ended with thinking I could keep you out of it. He raised his head with effort. Lucas Lawson's a good man. Better than me. Go with him. Get the annulment later if you want. The bartender approached, wiping his hands on a rag. He's right about one thing, madam. Mr. Lawson is respected in these parts. Runs an honest business. If he's offering you work, it's legitimate. Vivian looked around the sad, dim saloon, at the man she had married who was now a shell of himself, and at the swinging doors through which Lucas Lawson had departed. 6 months ago, she had made one choice that had led her here. Now she was faced with another. 20 minutes later, Vivian stood outside the general store, her valise at her feet. Lucas Lawson was loading supplies into a wagon, his movements efficient and purposeful. He didn't seem surprised when she approached. I accept your offer of employment, Mr. Lawson, she said formally. Though I want to be clear that I am still a married woman, and I expect all proper boundaries to be respected. Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable. Of course, Mrs. Vance. It's a job offer, nothing more. He gestured to the wagon. We've got about a 2-hour ride ahead of us. Hope you're not too worn out from your journey. As Lucas helped her onto the wagon seat, Vivian caught a glimpse of Theodore watching from the saloon doorway. He raised a hand in a gesture that might have been farewell, might have been apology, or might have simply been reaching for support to keep himself upright. Then he turned and disappeared back into the darkness of the failing establishment. He wasn't always like this, Vivian said quietly as they pulled away from the town. No man starts at his worst, Lucas replied. But it's the choices we make when times get hard that show who we really are. The wagon rumbled out of Copper Springs, leaving behind the remnants of one life, as Vivian Vance faced uncertainly toward another. The vast Arizona sky stretched endlessly above them, painted with the amber and crimson hues of approaching sunset. Whatever awaited her at Whispering Creek Ranch, Vivian knew one thing for certain: nothing in her genteel Boston upbringing had prepared her for this turn of events. The journey to Whispering Creek Ranch passed mostly in silence. The initial awkwardness of their arrangement hung in the air between them, but Vivian was too exhausted to maintain conversation, and Lucas Lawson seemed content with the quiet. The wagon rolled through rugged terrain, the landscape growing more picturesque as they left the mining district behind. "There it is," Lucas said finally, breaking the silence as they crested a ridge. Below them, nestled in a green valley fed by a winding creek, sat a sprawling ranch. The main house was larger than Vivian had expected, a two-story structure built of sturdy timber, with a wide porch wrapping around three sides. Several outbuildings, corrals, and smaller cabins dotted the property. In the distance, cattle grazed on grassland that seemed impossibly lush compared to the dusty town they'd left behind. "It's beautiful," Vivian admitted, genuinely surprised. "I didn't expect so much green in the territory." "Underground springs feed the creek year-round," Lucas explained, a note of pride in his voice. "Makes this land special, worth fighting for." As they approached the main house, a woman emerged onto the porch, older, with silver-streaked dark hair pinned neatly back, wearing a practical dress and apron. "That's Mrs. Hattie Daniels," Lucas said. "Been housekeeper here since before my time. Don't let her stern look fool you, kindest woman in the territory." The wagon pulled to a stop, and Lucas jumped down, extending a hand to help Vivian. Her legs felt unsteady after the long journey, and she gripped his forearm more tightly than she'd intended. "Mrs. Daniels," Lucas called, "this is Mrs. Vivian Vance. She'll be taking the teaching position." The housekeeper assessed Vivian with keen eyes, then nodded, her expression softening. "Welcome to Whispering Creek, Mrs. Vance. You look dead on your feet, poor thing. Come inside, I've got supper keeping warm and a room prepared." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly refined. Polished wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and shelves lined with books spoke of prosperity and taste. Vivian felt a pang of regret for the palace Theodore had promised versus the squalid reality she'd found. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Mrs. Daniels said. "Why don't you freshen up while I set out supper? Then we can discuss your duties starting tomorrow." "That's very kind, thank you," Vivian replied, grateful for the woman's no-nonsense efficiency. Lucas cleared his throat. "I need to check on a sick calf in the north pasture. I'll join you ladies for supper in about an hour." Alone in the tidy bedroom, Vivian finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. The day's events crashed over her: the devastating discovery of Theodore's true circumstances, the impossible choice she'd made, and now finding herself in a stranger's home, dependent on his charity thinly disguised as employment. She sank onto the edge of the bed and wept quietly, allowing herself exactly 5 minutes of self-pity before rising to wash her face in the porcelain basin provided. The small trunk containing the remainder of her possessions would arrive on the next supply wagon from town, Lucas had assured her. For now, she had only the valise with her immediate necessities. She changed into her second-best dress, a dark green cotton, that had fared better on the journey than her blue traveling outfit, and repinned her honey-brown hair. When she descended to the dining room, Mrs. Daniels was placing a steaming tureen on the table. Just in time, the housekeeper said approvingly, "Mr. Lawson sent word he'll be delayed a bit longer. The calf's in a bad way, apparently." "I see." Vivian hesitated. "Mrs. Daniels, I feel I should explain my unusual circumstances." The older woman waved a hand dismissively. "No need, Mrs. Vance. News travels fast in these parts. I know about your husband's situation, and I know Mr. Lawson well enough to understand why he offered you this position." She gestured for Vivian to sit. "The children genuinely need a teacher. The last one left 3 months ago to get married. Most of the ranch hands are family men, and education matters to Mr. Lawson." "That's reassuring," Vivian said, taking a seat at the table. "Mr. Lawson's father built this ranch from nothing," Mrs. Daniels continued, ladling beef stew into a bowl for Vivian. "Taught his son that a man's word is his bond. When the senior Mr. Lawson passed 5 years ago, Lucas took over and has run things with the same principles." She placed a basket of fresh bread on the table. "You're in good hands here, Mrs. Vance. Whatever your situation with your husband, you'll be treated with respect at Whispering Creek. Vivian felt some of her tension ease. Thank you. I was a teacher in Boston before my marriage. I'm grateful for the opportunity to practice my profession again. You'll have 12 students to start, Mrs. Daniels explained. Ages 6 to 14. The schoolhouse is that smaller building you might have noticed east of the main house. It's been cleaned and prepared. You'll start on Monday, giving you tomorrow and Sunday to settle in. By the time Lucas joined them, Vivian had learned much about the ranch's operations from the housekeeper. Lucas entered quietly, his expression weary but satisfied. "Cav's going to make it," he announced, washing his hands in a basin by the door before joining them. "Sorry for the delay. Mrs. Daniels has been giving me an overview of the ranch," Vivian said. "It's quite impressive." Lucas accepted a bowl of stew with a nod of thanks to Mrs. Daniels. "Been in the family for 20 years. My father came west after the war between the states, looking for a fresh start. Found this valley and knew he'd found home." He glanced at Vivian. "Mrs. Daniels tell you about the school?" "Yes, and I'm looking forward to meeting the children." "Good. Most of them are eager learners, though a couple of the boys might test your patience." A small smile crossed his features. "Fair warning." The rest of the meal passed in comfortable conversation about practical matters, the school schedule, ranch routines, and local happenings. Not once did Lucas mention Theodore or the circumstances of Vivian's arrival, for which she was grateful. After supper, Lucas excused himself to finish evening chores, and Mrs. Daniels showed Vivian to a small sitting room. Mr. Lawson had these brought down from the attic when he decided to reopen the school, the housekeeper explained, gesturing to several crates of books. "Belonged to his mother. She was educated back east, like yourself. Thought you might want to look through them for the schoolroom." Left alone with the books, Vivian felt a surge of purpose as she began sorting through them. Primers, readers, mathematics texts, and literature, a surprising collection for a frontier ranch. She became so engrossed in organizing them that she didn't notice Lucas's return until he spoke from the doorway. "Find anything useful?" he asked. Vivian looked up, startled. "Yes, quite a lot actually. Your mother had excellent taste in educational materials. She was determined I'd be educated properly, despite our location." He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets. "She'd be pleased to know her books are being put to use again." "Was she a teacher?" Vivian asked. Lucas nodded. "In Virginia, before the war. Taught me at home until I was 12, then insisted my father send me east to school for 4 years. He picked up one of the readers, his expression distant. "She passed while I was away. Influenza." "I'm sorry," Vivian said softly, recognizing the lingering pain in his voice. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was." He set the book down carefully. "You remind me of her somewhat. Same determination." He cleared his throat. "I wanted to make sure you have everything you need for tonight. Tomorrow I can show you around the property, introduce you to some of the families." "That would be helpful. Thank you." Vivian hesitated, then added, "Mr. Lawson, I want to thank you properly for your kindness today. I was in an impossible situation, and you offered me a dignified way forward. No need for thanks. The position needed filling, and you needed work." He shifted, seemingly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "We'll set a fair salary tomorrow. I don't want you to feel obligated." "I appreciate that." An awkward silence fell between them. Lucas broke it first. "I should let you rest. It's been a long day for you." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Vance, I think you've shown considerable courage today. Not many would have the strength to make the choice you did." Before she could respond, he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Vivian sat among the scattered books, pondering his words. Courage wasn't how she would have described her actions: desperation, perhaps, or self-preservation. But as she considered the alternative, staying with Theodore in his downward spiral, she realized Lucas might be right. She had made a difficult choice, one that honored her own worth rather than clinging to the empty shell of her marriage. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same resolve. The first week at Whispering Creek passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Lucas had shown Vivian around the property on Saturday, introducing her to the ranch hands and their families. The children had regarded her with curiosity, the younger ones shy, the older ones assessing. By Monday morning, when school officially began, Vivian had memorized all their names and prepared lessons appropriate to their varied levels. The schoolhouse was simple but functional: rows of bench desks facing a larger teacher's desk, a blackboard mounted on the wall, and large windows that provided ample light. Vivian found herself slipping easily back into the rhythms of teaching, grateful for the familiar routine amid so much upheaval in her life. She saw little of Lucas during the day. He was busy with ranch operations, often riding out before dawn and returning after dark. Their interactions were limited to brief exchanges at breakfast or supper, always polite, always proper. Mrs. Daniels provided a constant, comforting presence, and Vivian found herself growing fond of the no-nonsense housekeeper. On Thursday evening, as Vivian was grading arithmetic exercises in the sitting room, Lucas entered with a letter in hand. "Mel came from town today," he said, holding out the envelope. "This is for you." Vivian recognized Theodore's handwriting immediately. Her stomach tightened as she accepted it. "Thank you." Lucas lingered for a moment. "I'll leave you to your privacy." "No, please stay," Vivian said, surprising herself. I'd rather not read this alone." He nodded, taking a seat in the armchair across from her. Vivian broke the seal and unfolded the single page. "Vivian," she read aloud, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "By the time you receive this, I will be en route to California. The saloon has been seized by creditors, as expected. I have secured passage with a westbound freight wagon in exchange for labor. I release you from any obligation to me as a wife. You deserved better than what I offered. I have written to my attorney in Boston to begin annulment proceedings on grounds of abandonment. You need only sign the papers when they arrive. Forgive me if you can. Theodore." Vivian folded the letter carefully and placed it on the side table. She felt oddly hollow, neither relieved nor devastated. "Are you all right?" Lucas asked quietly. "Yes, I believe I am," she replied. "It's for the best, really. The marriage was a mistake from the beginning, too hasty, built on illusions we both maintained." She looked up at Lucas. "Is it terrible that I feel more embarrassment than heartbreak?" "No," he said simply. "Seems like an honest reaction to me. He wasn't always as you saw him." Vivian felt compelled to explain. "When we met in Boston, he was charming, ambitious. I believed in his dreams. Perhaps I wanted so badly to escape my predictable life that I ignored the warning signs." Lucas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We all have dreams that don't pan out, Mrs. Vance. The test is what we do afterward. Theodore chose the bottle. You chose to stand on your own 2 feet. His eyes, direct and clear, held hers. That tells me everything I need to know about both of you." His words warmed something inside her, a flicker of pride in her own resilience. "Thank you for saying that. It's just the truth." He stood, moving toward the door. "If you need anything, legal advice, assistance with those annulment papers when they come, just ask. Might not be a Boston lawyer, but I know a thing or two about contracts." "I appreciate that, Mr. Lawson." He paused at the threshold. "Given the circumstances, might be time you called me Lucas." A small smile curved her lips. "Then you should call me Vivian." "Vivian," he repeated, as if testing the feel of her name. "Good night, then." "Good night, Lucas." After he left, Vivian picked up Theodore's letter again, reading it once more in private. There was a finality to it that should have devastated her, yet instead, she felt the stirrings of something that felt dangerously like hope. As summer progressed into autumn, Vivian found herself settling into life at Whispering Creek with surprising ease. The rhythm of ranch life, early mornings, productive days, and quiet evenings suited her temperament. The children were progressing well in their studies, and she had begun hosting additional reading sessions for adults in the evenings twice a week. Several of the ranch hands and their wives attended eagerly, hungry for education they'd never had opportunity to pursue. Lucas often sat at the back during these sessions, ostensibly reviewing ranch accounts, but Vivian noticed his attention frequently drifted to the lessons. One evening in late September, after the others had departed, he approached her as she gathered her materials. "You're good at this," he said, helping her stack the readers. "Teaching, I mean. You have a gift for it." "Thank you," she replied, pleased by the compliment. "I've always loved it. In Boston, I felt constrained by the rigid curriculum. Here, I can adapt to what each student truly needs." "Freedom to do things properly," Lucas nodded. That's what drew my father west. Same thing that keeps me here. They walked together toward the main house, the evening air carrying the first hint of autumn crispness. Lanterns glowed in the windows ahead, creating a welcoming sight that Vivian realized she now thought of as home. The annulment papers arrived today, Lucas said after a comfortable silence. Mrs. Daniels put them on your desk. Oh, Vivian felt a momentary pang, not of regret, but of finality. Thank you for telling me. Do you need help reviewing them? Legal language can be tricky. I'd appreciate that, she admitted. Perhaps after supper? Lucas nodded, and they continued walking, shoulders occasionally brushing in the growing darkness. These moments of quiet companionship had become precious to Vivian over the past months. There was an ease between them now, a comfortable understanding that required few words. After supper, they reviewed the documents together in the study. The legal terms were straightforward enough. Theodore was claiming abandonment, sparing Vivian any public embarrassment. All that was required was her signature to acknowledge receipt and agreement. Seems straightforward, Lucas said, sliding the papers back to her. Sign here and here, and you'll be legally free of the marriage. Vivian picked up the pen, hesitating briefly before signing her name. It feels strange, she admitted. 6 months ago, I was a newlywed. Now I'm signing away that life as if it never happened. It happened, Lucas said quietly. Just wasn't the right life for either of you. She completed the signatures, then sealed the documents in the provided envelope. There. Done. I'll have them sent back with tomorrow's mail wagon, Lucas offered, taking the envelope. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, a brief contact that sent unexpected warmth through Vivian. Thank you. She looked up to find his eyes on her, their expression difficult to read in the lamplight. For everything, Lucas. These past months, I don't know what I would have done without your kindness. You'd have managed, he said with certainty. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Vivian. The way he said her name soft yet firm, like he believed in her completely, made something shift inside her. She realized with sudden clarity that her feelings for Lucas Lawson had grown beyond gratitude or friendship. It's getting late, she said, rising abruptly, unsettled by her realization. I should prepare tomorrow's lessons. If Lucas noticed her sudden discomfort, he didn't comment on it. Of course. Good night, Vivian. Good night. Alone in her room, Vivian paced, trying to make sense of her emotions. She'd known Lucas barely 3 months. Her marriage was only just ending officially. It was too soon, too complicated to be developing feelings for him. Yet there they were, undeniable and growing stronger each day. She went to the window, looking out at the ranch bathed in moonlight. In the distance, she could see Lucas walking toward the stables, his figure silhouetted against the silver-washed landscape. He moved with purpose, as he did in all things. That was what had first drawn her to him, his steadiness, his integrity. So different from Theodore's flash and charm. But Lucas was her employer. She was dependent on him for her livelihood, her home. Any feelings between them would be complicated by that reality. And she had no indication that he saw her as anything other than an employee in need of assistance. Vivian turned from the window, resolving to keep her growing feelings firmly in check. She had escaped one ill-considered relationship. She wouldn't rush headlong into another, especially one that could jeopardize her position here. Whispering Creek had become her sanctuary, her fresh start. She wouldn't risk that for a schoolgirl's infatuation, no matter how her heart quickened when Lucas entered a room. The autumn days grew shorter, and the ranch prepared for winter. Cattle were moved to sheltered pastures, firewood was stacked high, and preserves were put up in the kitchen. Vivian's days were filled with teaching, while her evenings were often spent helping Mrs. Daniels with domestic tasks or continuing her adult education classes. One Saturday in early November, Lucas asked her to accompany him to town for supplies. It would be her first return to Copper Springs since her arrival, and Vivian felt a flutter of nervousness at the prospect. We need to stock up before the winter storms make travel difficult, Lucas explained as he helped her into the wagon. And I thought you might like to select some additional books for the school. The general store received a new shipment last week. The ride to town was pleasant despite the chill in the air. Lucas had provided a thick woolen blanket for Vivian's lap, and conversation flowed easily between them. He told her stories about growing up on the ranch, and she shared memories of her teaching days in Boston. Did you ever regret coming west? She asked him during a lull in the conversation. After your schooling back east, I mean. Did you ever consider staying there? Lucas considered the question. For about 5 minutes, he admitted with a small smile. But this land gets in your blood. The freedom of it. The challenge. I couldn't imagine being hemmed in by city streets and other men's rules. I understand that now, Vivian said. I never thought I'd say this, but I don't miss Boston. Not really. Lucas glanced at her, his expression warming. The West suits you. You've taken to it like you were born to it. His praise pleased her more than it should have. Vivian turned her face away, ostensibly to observe a hawk circling overhead, but really to hide the color she felt rising in her cheeks. Copper Springs appeared on the horizon, looking much as it had the day she'd arrived. The Silver Dollar Saloon, she noted, had a new sign now called the Miners' Rest under new ownership. She felt no urge to go inside, no curiosity about what had become of the place after Theodore's departure. Lucas seemed to read her thoughts. We can avoid that end of town if you prefer. No need, she replied firmly. That's all in the past now. They completed their errands efficiently, supplies ordered and loaded, books selected for the school, and a few personal items purchased. As they were preparing to depart, a commotion near the sheriff's office caught their attention. A crowd had gathered around a man on horseback. As they drew closer, Vivian could see he was wearing a deputy's badge and appeared to be delivering news to the sheriff. Stagecoach robbery, Lucas murmured, overhearing the conversation. Sounds like it happened about 20 miles south. 2 passengers injured. The sheriff noticed them and waved Lucas over. Lawson, got a favor to ask. The doc's away delivering the Peterson baby. We've got injured folks coming in on a wagon within the hour. Your ranch is known for having medical supplies. Mrs. Daniels has some healing knowledge, doesn't she? She does, Lucas confirmed. What do you need? Bandages, laudanum if you have it, anything for treating gunshot wounds. And if Mrs. Daniels could come help, we'd be grateful. Nearest proper doctor is 2 days away. Lucas glanced at Vivian. We can head back right away, get what's needed. I can help too, Vivian offered. I have some experience with wound care from volunteering at the hospital in Boston. The sheriff looked relieved. Much obliged, madam. They hurried back to Whispering Creek, explained the situation to Mrs. Daniels, and gathered the requested supplies. Within 2 hours, they were back in Copper Springs, where the injured passengers had just arrived. One was an elderly man with a bullet grazed to his shoulder, the other a middle-aged woman with a more serious wound to her thigh. The town had set up a makeshift infirmary in the back room of the general store. Mrs. Daniels took charge immediately, directing Vivian to help with the woman while she tended to the man. Lucas assisted by boiling water, fetching supplies, and generally making himself useful where needed. For hours, they worked side by side. Vivian found herself impressed by Lucas's calm efficiency in a crisis, never panicking, always anticipating what was needed next. When the immediate danger had passed and both patients were resting comfortably, the sheriff insisted they stay the night in town rather than risking the dark ride back to the ranch. Miller's boarding house has rooms available, he told them. On the town's account, of course, and thanks for your help. Too exhausted to argue, they accepted the offer. Mrs. Daniels would share a room with the proprietor's wife, who was an old friend, while Lucas and Vivian were given separate rooms down the hall from each other. After washing up as best she could with the provided basin and pitcher, Vivian heard a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Lucas standing there, looking as tired as she felt. Just wanted to check that you're settled all right, he said. And to thank you for your help today. You were remarkable. I was just doing what needed to be done, she demurred. As were you. He nodded, then seemed to hesitate before speaking again. Watching you today, your composure, your skill, it reminded me of something my father used to say, that you can tell a person's true character by how they handle a crisis. His eyes, despite his evident fatigue, were warm as they held hers. You showed yours today, Vivian. It's everything I thought it was. The compliment touched her deeply. Thank you, Lucas. That means a great deal coming from you. A moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. For an instant, Vivian thought he might step closer, might finally bridge the careful distance they'd maintained these past months. Instead, he took a small step back. You should rest, he said softly. We'll head back to the ranch after checking on the patients in the morning. Yes, of course, she replied, hiding her disappointment. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Vivian." As she closed the door, Vivian leaned against it, her heart pounding. The way he had looked at her just now, there had been something there, something beyond employer and employee, beyond even friendship. She was certain of it. But Lucas had held back, had maintained the boundaries between them. Was it out of respect for her recently ended marriage? Concern about their working relationship? Or was she simply imagining feelings that weren't there, projecting her own growing affection onto his kindness? Vivian sighed, moving to the small bed. Tomorrow they would return to Whispering Creek, to their established routines and careful propriety. Whatever might have almost happened in this doorway would remain unspoken, another moment of possibility quietly set aside. Yet as she drifted toward sleep, Vivian couldn't help but wonder how long they could continue this dance around the growing attraction between them. Something would have to give eventually. She just didn't know what or when that would be. Winter descended on Whispering Creek with unexpected ferocity. A series of snowstorms in December left the ranch relatively isolated, with trips to town becoming infrequent and difficult. The schoolhouse was moved temporarily to the main house's dining room to save on firewood and make heating more efficient. The children arrived each morning bundled against the cold, often staying through lunch before making their way home in the early afternoon light. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere despite the harsh weather. Vivian threw herself into preparations, organizing the children to create decorations, helping Mrs. Daniels bake special treats, and even planning a small Christmas pageant for the ranch families. One evening, a week before Christmas, Vivian was in the sitting room sorting through pine cones the children had collected for decorating. Lucas entered, carrying a large evergreen branch. "Thought this might help with your decorating," he said, holding it up. "Couldn't manage a whole tree with the snow so deep, but figured this might do for the mantel." Vivian's face lit up. "It's perfect. Thank you, Lucas." She cleared a space on the table. "Put it here. I have some red ribbon we can use." Together, they arranged the branch along the mantelpiece, weaving ribbon through the needles and hanging small wooden ornaments the children had painted. Their hands brushed occasionally, each contact sending a now familiar warmth through Vivian. "The children are so excited about the pageant," she said, deliberately keeping the conversation light. "Even William, who insisted he was too old for such things, has agreed to narrate." "You've made quite an impression on them," Lucas observed, stepping back to admire their handiwork. "On everyone here, really. I've grown quite attached to Whispering Creek myself," she admitted. "It feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived." Lucas's expression softened. "I'm glad to hear that." He hesitated, then added, "I have something for you, an early Christmas gift. Wait here." He left the room, returning moments later with a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "I was going to wait until Christmas Day," he explained, handing it to her. "But I'd rather give it to you privately." Curious, Vivian untied the string and carefully opened the package. Inside was a book, a beautiful leather-bound collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. "Lucas," she breathed, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "This is exquisite. How did you?" "Ordered it from back east months ago," he explained, looking pleased at her reaction. "Remembered you mentioning she was your favorite poet." It finally arrived on the last mail wagon before the big snow. Vivian was touched beyond words. The thoughtfulness of the gift, remembering a casual comment she'd made months ago, going to such trouble to obtain it, spoke volumes. "I don't know what to say," she said finally, looking up at him. "Thank you seems inadequate." "Your expression is thanks enough," he replied softly. Impulsively, Vivian stepped forward and kissed his cheek, a brief touch of her lips against his skin. She felt him go very still, heard the slight catch in his breath. "Forgive me," she said, stepping back quickly. I shouldn't have." "Vivian," he interrupted, his voice low and intense. He reached for her hand, holding it gently in his own. "There's nothing to forgive." Time seemed to suspend as they stood there, the gift between them, their hands joined. Lucas's eyes searched hers, asking a question he couldn't quite voice. The moment was broken by Mrs. Daniels calling from the kitchen, announcing that supper was ready. Vivian withdrew her hand reluctantly. "We should go in," she said, clutching the book to her chest like a shield. Lucas nodded, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "This conversation isn't finished," he said quietly. just postponed. The Christmas pageant was held on Christmas Eve, with all the ranch families gathered in the main house. The children performed admirably, reciting their lines with only minor prompting from Vivian. Afterward, there was music. One of the ranch hands played fiddle while another accompanied on harmonica. People sang carols, shared stories, and enjoyed Mrs. Daniels's special Christmas punch. Vivian moved through the gathering, ensuring everyone had refreshments, accepting compliments on the pageant, and generally playing the role of hostess alongside Mrs. Daniels. She was conscious of Lucas watching her from across the room, his gaze following her movements. Several times, she thought he might approach her, but someone always seemed to intercept him with a question or conversation. As the evening wound down and families began departing for their cabins, Lucas finally made his way to her side. "Walk with me," he asked simply. Vivian nodded, retrieving her shawl from a hook by the door. The night was clear, the storm system having moved on, leaving behind a crystalline sky filled with stars. Their boots crunched in the fresh snow as they walked toward the corral, where moonlight cast blue shadows across the white landscape. "The children did wonderfully tonight," Lucas said, breaking the silence. "You should be proud." "I am," she replied. "They worked so hard." They stopped at the corral fence, looking out at the peaceful scene before them. Vivian waited, sensing Lucas had brought her out here for more than small talk about the pageant. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other night," he began, turning to face her. "The one we didn't finish." Vivian's heart quickened. "Yes, I've been careful these past months," he continued, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Respectful of your situation, of the fact that you work for me, that you were still legally married until recently." He took a deep breath. "Maybe too careful." "What are you saying, Lucas?" Vivian asked, needing to hear him speak plainly. "I'm saying that I care for you, Vivian. More than as an employee, more than as a friend." His eyes held hers steadily in the moonlight. "I think you might feel the same, but if I'm wrong, you're not wrong," she interrupted softly. "I do feel the same." Relief and joy spread across his features. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he reached up to cup her cheek with his gloved hand. "I've wanted to do this since that night at the boarding house," he murmured, leaning closer. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they parted, Vivian felt lightheaded, her pulse racing beneath her skin. "I've wanted that for even longer," she admitted with a small laugh. Lucas smiled, drawing her closer. "I should have known you'd be braver than me." Their second kiss was deeper, more certain. Lucas's arms encircled her waist as Vivian's hands came to rest on his chest. The December night fell away, the cold forgotten in the warmth they created between them. When they finally separated, Lucas kept her close, unwilling to let her go completely. "This changes things," he said seriously. "I don't want you to feel that your position here depends on us. The teaching job is yours regardless." "I know that," she assured him. "I've never doubted your integrity, Lucas." He nodded, relieved. "Good. Because I want to do this properly." He took her hands in his. "Court you properly, I mean. If that's what you want to." Vivian felt a surge of affection for this honorable man who had saved her in more ways than one. "That's exactly what I want." They walked back to the house hand in hand, their path illuminated by stars and possibility. Spring came to Whispering Creek in a rush of green and renewal. The snow melted, revealing new grass beneath, and the creek swelled with runoff from the mountains. Cattle were moved to higher pastures, and the ranch bustled with activity after the relative quiet of winter. For Vivian, the changing season marked nearly 6 months since her arrival at the ranch, and 3 months of openly courting Lucas. Their relationship had blossomed naturally, building on the foundation of mutual respect and friendship that had grown between them from the start. They were discreet, but not secretive. Everyone at the ranch knew of their attachment, but Lucas and Vivian maintained professional boundaries during working hours. Evenings and Sundays were their time together, riding across the property, reading aloud to each other from favorite books, or simply talking late into the night by the fire. One Sunday in April, Lucas suggested a picnic by the creek that gave the ranch its name. They rode out after the morning meal, a basket of Mrs. Daniels's provisions secured to Lucas's saddle. The spot he chose was idyllic, a grassy bank beside a bend in the creek, sheltered by cottonwood trees just beginning to leaf out. They spread a blanket and unpacked their lunch, enjoying the simple pleasure of dining outdoors after months confined by winter weather. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Lucas said as they finished their meal. "Your teaching contract was for 1 year. We're coming up on half that time." Vivian tensed slightly. "Yes, that's true. I was wondering if you'd consider extending it. The children have progressed remarkably under your guidance." He paused. "Of course, I have personal reasons for wanting you to stay as well." She smiled, relieved. "I'd like that very much. I can't imagine leaving Whispering Creek now." Lucas nodded, seeming pleased but still somewhat reserved. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, keeping it concealed in his palm. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Vivian's breath caught as he opened his hand to reveal a ring, a simple gold band set with a small but perfect diamond. "It was my mother's," he explained softly. "My father gave it to her when they decided to come west together. He said it represented their new beginning." Lucas met her eyes. "I'm hoping it might represent ours as well." "Lucas," Vivian whispered, emotion making it difficult to speak. He took her hand gently. "I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I feel like I've known you all my life, Vivian. You're the person I want to build this ranch with, raise a family with, grow old with." His voice was steady, certain. "I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy welled in Vivian's eyes. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Lucas." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been made for her all along. Then he kissed her, a kiss full of promise and shared dreams. When they finally parted, Vivian looked down at the ring sparkling in the spring sunlight. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here now engaged to a rancher in Arizona territory, I would never have believed them." Lucas smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Life has a way of surprising us. When you stepped off that stagecoach last summer, I had no idea you'd change my world completely." "I'm glad I did," she said, "even though the circumstances were unconventional." "Speaking of which," Lucas said, his expression growing more serious, "there's something else I should tell you." "About Theodore?" Vivian tensed. "What about him?" "I received word last month that he passed away in San Francisco. Apparently, he fell ill with pneumonia." Lucas watched her carefully. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but it didn't seem right to keep it from you either." Vivian absorbed the news with a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for a life cut short, for dreams unfulfilled, but no real grief. That chapter of her life had closed months ago. "Thank you for telling me," she said finally. "Poor Theodore. He never did find what he was looking for." "Are you all right?" Lucas asked, concerned. "Yes," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "It's sad news, but it doesn't change anything between us. I made my peace with that marriage long ago." They sat quietly for a moment, the creek bubbling past them, before Lucas spoke again. "I was thinking we might have the wedding in June, before the summer heat gets too intense. Unless you'd prefer to wait longer?" Vivian smiled, grateful for his sensitivity in moving the conversation forward. "June would be perfect. A small ceremony here at the ranch, with the people who have become our family." "Exactly what I was thinking," Lucas agreed. "Though we should invite the sheriff and his wife. He's still convinced he deserves credit for bringing us together, since he's the one who asked us to help with those injured passengers last winter." Vivian laughed. "By that logic, we should invite the stagecoach robbers too." Lucas joined her laughter, then pulled her close again. "Whoever deserves the credit, I'm just grateful you're here, that you chose to stay that day in town, that you're choosing to stay forever now." "Best decision I ever made," Vivian murmured against his lips. "Coming with you instead." Their wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect June morning that seemed created especially for beginnings. The ceremony was held under the cottonwood trees by the creek, where Lucas had proposed 2 months earlier. A simple arch of native wildflowers marked the spot where they would exchange their vows. Vivian prepared in her room at the main house, assisted by Mrs. Daniels and the wives of several ranch hands who had become dear friends. Her dress was new, ordered from a dressmaker in Tucson, a creamy satin that complemented her honey-brown hair, which she wore loose around her shoulders at Lucas's request. "You look beautiful, my dear," Mrs. Daniels said, adjusting the small wreath of flowers that served as Vivian's veil. Lucas won't know what hit him. I'm so nervous, Vivian admitted, smoothing her hands over the silk. Which is silly. It's just Lucas, after all. It's not silly at all, the older woman assured her. It's the most important day of your life. But trust me when I say that boy has been head over heels for you since the moment you arrived. I saw it even then, though he tried to hide it. Really? Vivian asked, surprised. Even then? Mrs. Daniels nodded. Why do you think he offered you the teaching position on the spot? We'd been without a teacher for months. He could have waited, interviewed others. But he knew. She patted Vivian's hand. Just as you knew, deep down, that he was the kind of man worth taking a chance on. A knock at the door announced that it was time. Vivian took a deep breath, gathering her small bouquet of wildflowers and roses from the ranch garden. The walk to the ceremony site was short, but meaningful, past the schoolhouse where she had found her calling again, past the corrals where she and Lucas had shared their first kiss, down to the creek that had witnessed their engagement. The ranch family stood as she approached, smiling faces turning to watch her progress toward Lucas, who waited beneath the flower arch with the circuit riding minister. When Lucas saw her, his expression of wonder and love nearly took Vivian's breath away. He extended his hand as she reached him, drawing her to his side with gentle reverence. You are beautiful beyond words, he whispered for her ears alone. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, their voices clear and certain in the morning air. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her with restrained passion, mindful of their audience, but unable to completely hide the depth of his feelings. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, a feast prepared by Mrs. Daniels and the other women. Music and dancing on a wooden floor Lucas had built specially for the occasion, and toasts to their happiness from friends who had become family. As twilight descended, Lucas led Vivian away from the festivities toward the surprise he had been working on secretly for weeks, a new cabin built a short distance from the main house, offering privacy while still being close to the heart of ranch operations. Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson, he said, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. The interior was simple but beautiful, polished wooden floors, sturdy furniture, some of it clearly handcrafted by Lucas himself, and shelves already filled with Vivian's books. A fire was laid ready in the stone hearth, which Lucas lit while Vivian explored their new home. It's perfect, she said, returning to his side as the fire caught and began to warm the room. When did you find time to do all this? I had help, he admitted. Most of the men pitched in. It was important to me that we have our own place, not just rooms in the main house. Thank you, she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. For this, for everything. For offering me a new life when I needed it most. Lucas drew her closer, his hands warm against the small of her back. Thank you for being brave enough to take it. He kissed her softly, then with growing intensity as the reality of their new status as husband and wife settled over them. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their new home, Vivian rested her head on Lucas's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. What are you thinking? He asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. About fate, she replied. How the worst day of my life turned out to be the best, though I couldn't see it then. Lucas's arms tightened around her. I knew the moment I saw you standing in that saloon, looking so lost and determined all at once, that you were special. I just didn't know then how important you would become to me. When did you know? She asked, curious. That you had feelings for me, I mean. He considered the question. I think it was that day we worked together helping those injured passengers. Seeing your compassion, your steadiness under pressure. But I didn't let myself admit it fully until Christmas, when you were so happy about that silly evergreen branch. Vivian smiled at the memory. It wasn't silly. It was thoughtful, like everything you do. And you? He asked. When did you know? The night you showed me the schoolhouse for the first time, she admitted. You were so passionate about education, about creating opportunities for the children here. I think my heart recognized something in you then, even if my head wasn't ready to acknowledge it. Lucas kissed the top of her head. We have a lifetime for our heads and hearts to be in agreement now. A lifetime, Vivian repeated, savoring the word and all it promised. I like the sound of that. 5 years later, Whispering Creek Ranch had grown and prospered under the joint stewardship of Lucas and Vivian Lawson. The main house had been expanded to accommodate a larger, permanent schoolroom. The number of students had nearly doubled as word spread of the quality education available at the ranch, drawing families from surrounding properties to send their children. Vivian balanced her teaching duties with motherhood. Their son James, now 3, was joined by a baby daughter, Elizabeth, just 6 months old. Lucas had built an addition to their cabin as their family grew, and the sound of children's laughter filled their home. On a warm summer evening, similar to the one when Vivian had first arrived at the ranch, the family sat on their porch watching the sunset. James played with wooden horses at their feet, while Elizabeth slept in Vivian's arms. 5 years today, Lucas said, reaching over to take her free hand. 5 years since you arrived in Copper Springs. Vivian smiled, surprised he had remembered the exact date. The worst and best day of my life. I've been thinking, Lucas said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. The children are getting bigger, the ranch is doing well. Perhaps it's time we took a trip. Show James and Elizabeth something beyond Arizona territory. What did you have in mind? Vivian asked, intrigued. Boston, maybe, he suggested. I'd like to see where you grew up, meet your mother if she's willing. He hesitated. Unless you'd rather not revisit the past. Vivian considered his suggestion. Actually, I think I'd like that. My mother has never met her grandchildren, and I'd like her to meet you properly. She smiled at him. She didn't approve of Theodore, you know? Said I rushed into marriage without really knowing him. Smart woman, Lucas observed with a grin. She was right, Vivian agreed. But I think she'll approve of you. And of what we've built together here. Lucas gazed out at the land stretching before them, the creek, the pastures, the distant mountains painted gold by the setting sun. It's a good life, isn't it? Not always easy, but good. The best, Vivian agreed, leaning against his shoulder. I wouldn't change a moment of it. Not even the difficult beginning. Lucas pressed a kiss to her temple. Especially not that. That difficult beginning brought you to me. James looked up from his play, observing his parents with childish curiosity. Tell the story, Mama, he requested. The one about how you and Papa met. Vivian exchanged a glance with Lucas, both of them smiling at their son's favorite bedtime tale, a carefully edited version of their meeting that emphasized Lucas's gallant rescue and omitted Theodore's more unfortunate qualities. Well, Vivian began, settling Elizabeth more comfortably in her arms. It was a very hot day, and I had traveled a very long way. As she recounted their story for their son, Vivian felt Lucas's arm tighten around her shoulders. Their eyes met over James's head, a world of shared memories and enduring love passing between them without words. From that first day in the saloon to this peaceful evening on their porch, their journey together had been unexpected, challenging at times, but ultimately more rewarding than either could have imagined. What had begun with a desperate choice, come with me instead, had blossomed into a life filled with purpose, partnership, and deep, abiding love. And as the Arizona sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, Vivian knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice that day. Not just for shelter or security, but for the chance at true happiness with a man whose quiet strength and unwavering integrity had healed her heart and given her a home in this place, and in his arms forever.